What if I told you that the life you're living today is based on a program that you have preset in your brain, and that your brain is not like a computer, but it is a computer, and you can change the programming to run any new life you want to run? That you today could begin to reprogram your brain in such a way that you change all of your life. The good news is your brain is a computer and it can be reprogrammed, and I can show you how to do it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So here's how our brains work. From the time before we are born, about 3 months before birth, our brains develop enough that they start taking in information. And we could get into a whole different bunch of brain waves like alpha waves and beta waves and theta waves, and how each of those brain waves take us into different states of consciousness, and we can absorb more and more as we go deeper and deeper into things like meditation. But when you are born, your brain is almost in a meditative state. Your prefrontal cortex, where you do most of your thinking as a baby, is not yet formed. So back when you and I are babies, and we're still sucking on a pacifier over here and kind of taking in information from our world around us, our brain is like a big giant funnel. It is in theta brain waves. And what it's doing when it's like that, it's just constantly downloading information. Information is just falling into us from our parents, our environment, and we are in a strict learning mode. That's why when you're a child and you're young, you don't distinguish until about 7 years old the difference in reality and imagination. It's impossible to understand until our brains fully begin to really develop that thinking part of the brain, that creative part of the brain, the difference in what's real and what's not. That's why little kids go to movies and it's magical and it's real to them, because they can't distinguish that yet. They're in that theta brain pattern, and that's where they're supposed to be because they're learning new information. Now, our brains are just like a computer, and 90 to 95% of your brain is your subconscious. That's what resides there. That's what works there. Now, in the front of our brains, in our prefrontal cortex, that's the kind of 5 to 10% portion of our brain where we're actually controlling, for the most part, the thoughts we're thinking. Critical thinking goes on there, task-oriented things, paying attention in a lecture, listening to something like I'm doing when I'm talking to you here today. We're focusing those thoughts, but that's only about 5 to 10% of what our brain really does and where it's going on. The rest of the brain, the 90 to 95% portion, is that subconscious, and it's like the hard drive of your brain. It's just constantly being programmed. And until we get to be about 30 years old, we're programming. For most of us, in our early 30s, we've programmed the information and we continue to live in an endless loop of the life we've set up for ourselves. Our limiting beliefs are there. All the things we tell ourselves that are either true or not true is there. Our beliefs are there. We're kind of living on the hard drive program that we've built for ourselves. But here is the great news. You can change it all anytime you want, and you can go back to this theta brainwave baby state through things like meditation and slowing down. We're going to talk about some of those practices today and how to do this. But you can literally reprogram this brain to think any thoughts that you want it to think. Now, I want to talk to you for a couple of minutes about why it's difficult for us to do that. If you can just change your thinking and change your brain and then change your life, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, first of all, not everybody knows how to do it. I want to share with you what I have gained through literally hundreds of hours of listening to doctors and neuroscientists and brain surgeons and different people like Joe Dispenza and James Doty and so very many others, Wayne Dyer, and I could just name a whole host of them. And books and books and books I've read about this, and I like to take it and narrow that information down for you so you can grab it here. Most people do not have this information. I've put hundreds of hours of listening and reading and researching this stuff to help give it away to you right here. So I'm glad you've joined me. By the way, it's a great time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe below so you can get more and more of this content. But here it is. This is kind of what's going on and what blocks people from changing it all. Number one is knowledge. They just don't know they can do it. Now, number two is they don't know the process, the steps involved to change their thinking. And here is why. We have a thing built into our brain that is there to protect us. And it's the 3 F's that should be protecting your brain today. And the first F is fight mode. The second F is flight mode. And the third F is freeze mode. Now, we're either operating when we're in a dangerous situation. Your brain is set up to do this. We want to either fight, we want to flee, and that's flight mode, or we want to freeze. This is what happens when we get terrified in our life. It's either fight, flight, or freeze. That's what happens in a dangerous situation. Your brain is hardwired to do that. That's so years ago when you're out in the jungle and the big tiger or the big lion or the big bear comes up on you, you either do one of these things. Your body goes into a mode, your brain sends out all these chemicals that says you need more muscles, you need more oxygen, you get cortisol and stress hormones and all these things pumping because it gets you ready to either fight off that threat if you can't get away, or to flee, flight mode, to run away, to give you enough adrenaline and enough energy so you can run through the trees and get away from that threat, or you freeze and you hide and pretend that you're just a tree in the woods and maybe that animal won't see you. Now, here's the problem. Nowadays, we live in a cycle of these 3 F's. We live in a cycle of constantly feeling we have to fight, we have to flee, or we have to freeze. We're in constant stress. Our brain is putting out cortisol all the time because we've allowed ourselves to stay in our prefrontal cortex, constantly thinking, overanalyzing, constantly sending emails and having to connect with this person and connect with that person. And when we're not doing that, we're so addicted to it, we pick up our phones and we just doom scroll, and we got to keep that thinking mode going. And we live in this stress state that is part of your body that's designed to be very temporary, a few minutes to get you out of a dangerous situation, but we live in it 24/7. And what it does is it keeps us out of that 90 to 95% of our brain where the magic happens, down here in the hard drive in the subconscious. So what we have to learn to do is to get out, to escape this fight, flight, or freeze mode and get back to these theta brainwave patterns where we can feed the hard drive, feed our brain new information and reprogram it to begin to believe and to strive for and to go after the life that's been only the life of our dreams up to this point. But your dream life is possible if you learn how to do this. So how do we do it? 3 things, and I want to get into them with you. Number 1, we need to just simply slow down in life. If you slow down and start to pay attention to what's going on around you, you're going to be able to access some parts of your brain you did not know you could access. So, number 1, you need to simply slow down. When we slow down, now we are beginning to access a part of our brain that we normally do not access. Now, how do we do that? When we slow down, it lets us become aware of the thoughts that we are thinking. When we get aware of the thoughts we're thinking, and you can do this, this is a practice of mindfulness, of being able to back up in the moment you're living in and say, you know what? Why am I thinking that I can't do this? Why am I thinking that this challenge is too big for me? Why am I thinking that my life is limited? Why am I thinking, look how good they have it. I wish I could do that, but I'll never have that. Where are those thoughts coming from? When we slow down, we begin to get aware. Now, the second step is when we slow down, we need to start to sow down. Now, what do I mean by that? To sow down is to start sowing down some new seeds into our brain, because you can do this. You can download any program, any information you want to, and you can drop these new seeds in and override this program that you've been living in all of your life. So how do you do that? How do you sow new seeds in there? Well, once you slow down, you, through practices like meditation, taking a time in your day. Joe Dispenza, by the way, has got some great meditations over on YouTube and Spotify that'll lead you down a whole journey and how to do this in a much better way than I could ever do it here for you right now. But take some time out of your day to really slow your thoughts down, become aware of what you're thinking. And then as you sow down new seeds, you are literally averting you avert your attention to new thoughts. You're able to begin to think in new ways. You're able to start feeding your brain the thoughts you want to think. And it can be anything. It's the life of your dreams. It's whatever you want to live. It's whatever you want to change. You can change anything when it comes to thoughts in your life you want to think. You just have to slow down and become aware of the thoughts you're thinking and say, you know what, now I'm going to sow down some new thoughts and I'm going to avert my attention away from the old way of thinking, and I'm going to focus it in on a new way of thinking. So when you slow down and you start to sow down new seeds, then you need to do the third thing, and this is the part I love. You secure positive emotions. You secure brand new positive emotions. You attach positive emotion to this new thinking. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's what we're talking about. It's not enough just to think new thoughts and say, okay, here's the life I want. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to think of what it would be like to be a millionaire. I'm going to think about what it'd be like to have that new relationship. I'm going to think about what it would be like to have that dream job or dream home or go on that dream vacation. That's one thing. But when you secure positive emotion to that and you start to feel a feeling attached to that of what it would truly feel like to live that life of your dreams, whatever it is, guess what you're doing now? Now you are hypercharging the hard drive. Now you are putting that program in there and you're telling your brain, this is important, pay attention to it. You know how when you buy a new car, we bought a new Tucson a few years ago, and I work at a Hyundai dealership, so I see Tucsons and stuff every day, but I never really paid attention to them out on the road other than I would see them and think, yeah, it's a Hyundai. But when I bought a Tucson, I started seeing Tucsons everywhere. Did everybody go out and buy new Tucsons? No. I saw them because I told my brain, this is something to pay attention to. This is something important. Suddenly, your brain is seeing that car you drive everywhere and you're noticing it because you've told your brain to pay attention to it. And when you start putting these new thoughts, you sow them down and you secure a positive emotion to them. You begin to think about what it would feel like to live that dream life. You smell that food you would eat if you were going to those fancy restaurants when you're a millionaire now. You start to taste that food in the restaurant, that wine that you would have with your meal, an expensive bottle where you normally wouldn't buy it. And you start to hear the sounds of the beach around you when you're on that dream vacation. When you start to program that in your mind, now you're securing this strong emotion to it. And when you secure this strong emotion, what you do is you attach feeling to the new thoughts. And when you become aware of the thoughts you're thinking, you avert your attention to new thoughts. You start to sow some new ones down. You attach this strong emotion to it. You start to form this into reality in your life. And you start to get out of this mode over here. See, so many people right now in their life are living right where you're living, right where I was living a year ago. And whatever comes into your life, the boss yells at you, or your spouse or significant other has a tense moment with you, what do you want to do? The first thing you want to do is ball up your fist and say, let's fight, because you're in that fight mode. You get into that resistance mode. If you have an encounter with a coworker at work or a situation you don't like, what's the next thing you do? You want to flee. You want to get away from it. You go into that flight mode where you say, man, I'm out of here. I can't take this. I'm running away. You go into flight mode because you're living in this loop right here. Or sometimes you just do what I was very good at when I lived like this. You just stop. You just put a stop sign up mentally in your mind, and you just freeze. You stop right here. You put the brakes on. See, most of us are living in this mode, in this cycle, and it's keeping us out of this mode, and it's stopping us from downloading new thoughts with new emotions attached to them into the hard drive of our brain. And that's when we can't change our lives. But the truth is, you can start this process today. You can change it all today if you will decide to do these 3 things right here. Are you ready to slow down today? Are you ready to sow down some new thoughts in your brain? Are you ready to secure positive emotions? Feel that life you want to live as if you're already living it. If you are, you're on your way to a brand new journey. Follow along, subscribe below. Tell me in the comments, what is the biggest dream that you have for your life today? Put that in there as a way of sowing it down. Put it in the comments today. Plant the seed and let me help you get